My name is Julia Archer, and this is the story of how my life was turned upside down not once, but twice. It all began in a small suburban town where I grew up with my loving parents, Robert and Laura Archer. My dad was a dedicated journalist, and my mom worked as a compassionate nurse. We weren't wealthy, but we had love and laughter in our home. Life was pretty normal until I turned 14. That rainy Friday evening, while I was at home with my grandmother, watching cartoons, the phone rang. I'll never forget the chill that swept through me when I heard my grandma crying softly in the kitchen. The next few days blurred into a haze of grief and disbelief. Mom had died in a car crash, struck by a drunk driver. My dad, Robert, survived, but barely. His legs were crushed in the wreckage. When I finally saw him in the hospital, he was just a shadow of the man I once knew. "I'm so sorry, Julia," he whispered, reaching for my hand. I didn't understand why he was apologizing, but as I grew older, I realized he was sorry for the life we were about to lose, for the struggles we would face without Mom. Yet, Robert Archer was stronger than he believed. After recovering from his injuries, he threw himself into his work as an editor at the city's major newspaper. As I entered my teenage years, he made sure I had everything I needed, encouraging me to join clubs and make friends. But honestly, I preferred spending time with him. We'd watch old movies, argue about books, and share late-night snacks. When it was time for college, he insisted I go away to spread my wings. "You need to live your life, sweetheart," he said, hesitant. But knowing he was right, I enrolled at the State University of New York, where I studied accounting. That's where I met Emily, who would become my best friend. Through her, I met her charming cousin, Thomas. Thomas was kind and funny, and he didn't flinch when I shared my family's story. The first time he met my dad, they bonded over their shared love for classic rock. "Your dad is awesome," he told me later. "You're amazing for taking care of him." I glowed inside, feeling for the first time that maybe I could have a normal life filled with love and laughter. After graduation, life seemed to fall into place. I landed a job at a local tax service while Thomas began his career as a long-haul truck driver. We dated for wonderful years before he proposed to me on a crisp autumn evening in the very park where we had our first date. I was thrilled, but had one crucial caveat. "I can't leave my dad. He needs me." Thomas smiled wide. "We'll all live together. Your dad's apartment is big enough for the three of us, right?" The wedding was small but beautiful. Dad wheeled himself down the aisle to give me away, and there wasn't a dry eye in the place. I felt like I was living a fairy tale, but every fairy tale has its villains, and mine came in the form of my mother-in-law, Margot, and my sister-in-law, Olivia. From the moment I met them, I sensed their disapproval. "So, your father is disabled?" Margot asked during our first meeting, her nose wrinkling in distaste. "He works as an editor?" "How nice," she interrupted, clearly uninterested. She then turned to Thomas, questioning, "Are you sure about this? There are so many nice girls from good families." I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment, but Thomas defended me.
"Mom, Julia is from a good family. Her dad's disability doesn't change that. I love her, and that's all that matters."
That moment momentarily silenced Margot, but her disapproval lingered in the air like a storm cloud. Life settled into a routine after our wedding. I went to work while Thomas was on the road, and we often had family dinners together when he was home. But every visit from Margot and Olivia changed the atmosphere. They acted like they owned the place, ignoring Dad's presence. One evening, I overheard Margot whispering to Olivia, "It's a shame. Thomas could have done so much better. Now he's stuck with this girl and her crippled father." I was furious, but kept my silence for Thomas's sake. However, one evening, after a particularly tense visit, I broke down in tears. "They hate me, Thomas. They think I'm not good enough because of my dad." He held me close, his face hardening.
"They're ridiculous. You and your dad are my family now. If they can't accept that, it's their problem."
As the months passed, Thomas's trucking business thrived, but the time apart weighed heavily on me. One crisp evening, as I helped Dad into bed, Thomas called, his voice brimming with excitement.
"How about buying a townhouse? It would be easier for your dad to move around, and we could have a garden."
Dad's eyes lit up at the idea, and together, we threw ourselves into house hunting. We found the perfect place, spacious, wheelchair accessible, with a beautiful backyard. The day we moved in, I'll never forget the look on Dad's face as he wheeled himself out onto our new patio. "This is perfect, sweetie," he said, misty-eyed. We decided to host a housewarming party, inviting friends, colleagues, and yes, even Margot and Olivia. They arrived fashionably late, strutting in like they owned the place. As we showed them around, I could see Margot's calculating gaze darting around our home. When we reached the master bedroom, she turned to me with a sly smile. "This would be perfect for Thomas and me. Why don't you send your father to a nursing home? He doesn't need all this luxury." I felt slapped. "Excuse me?" I managed to say. "Oh, don't look so shocked," she sneered. "Your father isn't well. He's not a whole person anymore." I was shaking with rage. Thankfully, Thomas heard the commotion and came running. "Mom, what the hell are you doing?" "Let go of Larry's chair." Margot's shock quickly turned to anger, but she backed off as Thomas demanded they leave. Once they were gone, Thomas was mortified. "I'm so sorry," he said. Dad patted his hand gently, reminding us that some people just couldn't understand. Life resumed a semblance of normality, but the tension hung like fog. Then came the call that shattered my world. I was at work when an unfamiliar voice greeted me.
"Mrs. Archer, this is Officer Daniels from the Highway Patrol. I'm sorry to inform you that your husband, Thomas, has been in a serious accident."
The rest was a blur of incomprehensible words, head-on collision, and didn't make it. Planning the funeral felt surreal, like I was in a dream. The day before, I called Margot to deliver the news myself. "Hello?" Her sharp voice answered. "Margot, it's Julia. Thomas is gone." Silence fell, and then her voice returned, dripping with venom. "This is your fault. You made him work so hard to pay for your fancy house. You killed my son." I was stunned. "Margot, that's not. Save it. You better give him the best funeral money can buy, but don't expect a dime from us." The line went dead, leaving me in tears. How could she be so cruel?
On the day of the funeral, the church overflowed with mourners, but Margot and Olivia were nowhere to be seen. Dad squeezed my hand. "It's their loss, sweetie. We're family, and we'll get through this together."
Returning home, I noticed the lights were on. Strange. As we approached, I saw movement inside. My heart raced. Were we being robbed? I wheeled Dad to the door, and as I opened it, a chill ran down my spine. There stood Margot and Olivia, surrounded by boxes in our living room. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, anger boiling. Margot feigned sympathy. "Oh, dear Julia, we're just helping you pack. You can't afford this place now that Thomas is gone." I was speechless. Olivia added, "Don't worry, you can go back to your father's apartment. It's cozy." I found my voice, low and dangerous. "Get out. You have 10 minutes before I call the police." Their shocked expressions faltered, and they scrambled to gather their things, leaving behind a trail of disbelief. The days that followed were a blur of grief and anxiety. Then came the call from Thomas's lawyer regarding the will. He had left everything to me to ensure my beloved Julia is cared for. He had written. My heart ached, but it also swelled with gratitude. I found a letter tucked inside the will, filled with sweet memories and future dreams we had shared. I could almost hear his voice as I read, and it gave me the strength I needed to move forward. As I began to sort through the financial chaos, I learned about a substantial insurance payout from the accident. It was enough to pay off our mortgage and provide for me and Dad for years to come. I was no longer the girl they could belittle. A week later, Margot and Olivia returned, storming into my home with false bravado. "We deserve to have a say in the estate," Margot began, but I cut her off. "Thomas left everything to me. I am his family. You're not welcome here." Margot's face turned pale, the words hitting her like a slap. "What do you mean? You can't do this." I smiled, feeling the power shift. "I just did. Leave now before I call the police." The weeks dragged on, and as I found solace in my unexpected pregnancy, Margot returned yet again, this time wearing a mask of false concern. "You need support, Julia. We're family. You need us now more than ever." I stood firm, the weight of my choices heavy but my resolve unyielding. You're right, family is important, but you don't get to define mine. Leave, now. Margot's face twisted in disgust as she scoffed. You're pregnant already? She spat, venom lacing her words. I smiled, not just for the baby, but for the strength I had found in myself. As they drove away, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. I had fought for my family, my dad and my unborn child, and I would continue to do so. Life had changed dramatically, but with Dad's unwavering support and the joy of my baby growing inside me, I knew we could face anything. We would thrive together, proving that love conquers all, even in the face of betrayal and hardship. And so, my life was turned upside down twice, but I came out stronger on the other side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Thank you for listening to my story.